All right. Good evening, everyone. I hope you all are staying safe and keeping healthy. A warm and humble welcome to the webinar series by Sharp under Youth and Adolescent Health. My name is Sanika Gupta, and I will be moderating today's session. A brief introduction about Sharp NGO. Sharp stands for School Health Annual Report Program, working for over 22 years in the field of holistic development and healthcare of students and children. We at Sharp try to educate and open conversation on problems related to the youth and adolescents, both during and after the pandemic. Through this webinar series, we hope to spark discussion on some very important topics pertaining to today's youth demographic. All parents and teachers want their kids to learn to be comfortable in their own skin, develop self-confidence, and thrive socially as they grow up. Unfortunately, some children develop in the opposite direction, being painfully self-conscious, afraid of rejection or embarrassment, and feel generally uncomfortable in social settings. The anxiety they experience is known as social anxiety or social phobia, and it's very intense and could potentially interfere with day-to-day aspects of their life. Since many teens worry about rejection and feel self-conscious, it can sometimes be difficult to determine what's normal and what's not when it comes to their emotions and behaviors. Through this webinar, we aim to discuss the signs of social anxiety disorder, social anxiety in schools, the impact of the pandemic, and your role as a parent, teacher, or peer. We thank you all for being here today and joining us in this very important conversation. Before we start, I would like to thank our panelists for taking the time to join us here today. On our panel today, we have Ms. Sakshi Dhanwar, Dr. Sunila Joy Chauhan, and Ms. Jyoti Kanda. Ms. Sakshi is an internationally trained trauma-informed internal family systems therapist, practicing for 6 years in India and helping people across the world via telepathy and in-person therapy sessions. She's worked with Delhi University, Bihar Prisons, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, and the Ministry of Health. Thank you so much for being here with us today, ma'am.
My pleasure.
Our next panelist is Dr. Sunila Joy Chauhan. Ma'am is the principal of Witty International School, Mumbai. She has an experience of over 19 years in education. She strongly advocates experiential learning and feels that the 21st century skills are a necessary part of the life of a Gen Z. She's a passionate educationalist who believes education is the key to solve most of the problems in our world. Ma'am is against any kind of child abuse and is a global goodwill ambassador who supports this cause. It's an honor to have you with us here today, ma'am.
Thank you for having me here. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you. Lastly, on our panel, we have Ms. Jyoti Kanda. She'll be joining us slightly late. Ma'am is a counseling psychologist and a licensed special educator, as well as child psychologist, with 10 years of clinical experience in treating general public and especially children and adolescents. She's participated in various open mic discussions for creating awareness amongst people for understanding psychological issues. Currently, she's working with St. Thomas School as the HOD of the psychology department. Thank you once again to all our panelists for taking the time to join us for this webinar. A few instructions before we start. We have a round of discussion with our panelists, following which we'll have a Q&A with the audience. We request the audience to drop their questions in the Q&A box, and we will take up live questions towards the end. Additionally, we request the audience not to fill the chat box with unnecessary messages, as we may tend to miss out the important questions. So before we delve into the meat of today's discussion, we'd like to first take some time to demystify the topic itself for all our attendees here today. Anxiety is a word that's generally thrown around very lightly, something that a lot of people don't have a comprehensive understanding of. And furthermore, people are not aware of what exactly social anxiety is. It's a term that has gone into people's dictionary very recently, more so after the pandemic. So our first question to the panel is, what exactly is social anxiety? So Ms. Sakshi, if you could take up this question.
Yeah, sure. So social anxiety is very intense fear being in social situations and a fear of embarrassment and rejection by others or negatively judged by others. So, and it's that high level nervousness and self-consciousness that we end up avoiding social situations. We end up avoiding people and events, social gatherings, close groups or friend circles. So it's constantly there and persists longer, and it gets so intense, and with time being it doesn't settle itself. It ends up worsening the situation more.
All right. So just as a slight follow-up to that, as with many behavioral and emotional issues, diagnosis is very difficult and people aren't aware of the indicators, right? So if you could just brief us about a few signs or red flags that parents and teachers can look for in adolescent children as like indicators of social anxiety.
Yeah, and it's very important to understand these signs and symptoms of social anxiety, because sometimes we feel that uh, you know um, a, a student is shy or introvert, and we label it as a personality, that he or she is a shy person and don't talk much, but it can be social anxiety, right? So we need to understand what can be the symptoms so that we can help that person, right? So the most important thing is, see, there are physical, emotional, and behavioral symptoms which we can notice in a person. Physical symptoms can be sweaty hands and excessive sweating, palpitations, rapid heartbeat, intense level of anxiety, and sometimes people end up, panic a lot. They have panic attacks in that situation, and some emotional symptoms can be, repetitive thoughts, intrusive thoughts, and self-criticizing thoughts, intense fear, anxiety, nervousness, right? And and then they start avoiding situations. They some students drop out from school because the intensity is that high that they couldn't cope up, and they end up dropping out from school and stop taking participation in activities. They go in their own shell, and uh, many kids are there. They limit themselves, and and it gets so difficult to understand their situation, why they are doing it, and parents and teachers sometimes don't understand why a kid is doing that. uh, yeah, so it's very important to understand these things.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think also it was very important to talk about the fact that there are physical indicators as well, because a lot of times with emotional or mental issues, people think that it's only in the person's mind, and physical manifestations are to do with like other issues
Yeah.
completely. So, another thing I wanted to talk about is obviously the effect of the pandemic, because already in like the teenage and adolescent group, a large part of social interactions were happening virtually, and the pandemic only augmented that. It's decreased the scope for social interaction itself in the past few years. So, how exactly has the pandemic affected social anxiety in children and adolescents? And also, if there's any examples that you've seen of, Dr. Chauhan, if you've seen in your students, or Ms. Sakshi, that you've seen in your practice, on how the pandemic has probably worsened it, or how it's generally affected social anxiety in children.
Should I start? Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. So I usually got many clients, mostly teenagers, who have this social anxiety, social phobia, and it got worse with during COVID, and there were lot of uncertainty, and as uh, teens are, they need social interactions, and everything has cut off, and they has to um, limit themselves. So it really impacted their mental health. And mostly cases I got, there are a lot of overthinking patterns, self-critical thoughts, and intense fear that they, end up feeling depressed or highly anxious, or they may be having panic attacks. And, you know, um, many teens, they want to go outside, explore the world, and, make friends and, do things which can help them learning, in learning, right? But due to this intense anxiety, they, end up remain in their own shell, and um, somehow they couldn't come out from that zone, and it limit them in such a big way.
All right, ma'am. Yeah. Also, Dr. Chauhan, if you could talk about how you've seen that manifestation probably in your students.
Actually, your voice is cracking. I'm unable to hear the question.
I'm so sorry. Is it better now? Can you hear me?
Yes, it's better.
All right. So we were talking about the effect of the pandemic, and I wanted to ask you about any cases that you've particularly seen in your students. Has it worsened after the pandemic, or what your opinion is having interacted with so many children?
Yes. So, what we have seen typically that when children, have got back to school, they have in fact displayed a lot more signs of social anxiety than even before. So, obviously, there are some children who already have the phobia, as you said, of meeting too many people and things like that. So, to be able to express themselves, to work in groups. So they have that fear, maybe because of different reasons. But after the pandemic, it's worsened because they've got used to being home in in an environment which is very very comfortable for them, because everybody in the family accepts them and knows all their everything about them. So when they've come back to school, many of them are really scared of interacting even with the teachers whom they were comfortable with. And as far as with friends, they do not seem to want to interact. They were just waiting to go back home. And also the online mode made them comfortable with another platform altogether, wherein they were able to meet everyone online from home. And that was a different world. So now coming back to the real world, we see that they are also very conscious about their self-confidence. They're not that confident now. And they want they're comfortable with apps, they're comfortable with Zoom and Google Meet. But when we talk about speaking and showing us some kind of a group presentation, they are really hesitant. As Ms. Sakshi was saying, they have the typical symptoms like sweating, stammering, looking down at their feet, mumbling in their mouth, something which has intensified. But then, yes, we have tried to help them out with that. And of course, one more thing, staying at home, the older kids have got this negative body image of themselves because they've been home. And, so they become conscious that they have become probably a little different from how they were before, little maybe a little overweight. And that has really impacted the adolescents more than the younger ones. And they have this negative thing about themselves that, they somehow they have to please everyone and all. So social anxiety we can see, and we have to deal with them by making them speak to counselors. We call the parents also and make them aware that, this is just a phase they're going through.
Thank you so much for that, ma'am. I think now that society is returning back to kind of the pre-pandemic normal, if we were to call it that, there's some hesitation and apprehension from students as well when it comes to, coming back to school and meeting new people, as you said, probably talking to teachers also again face to face. So how can this rehabilitation be made smoother in schools? Because We have a lot of teachers on this webinar as well. School used to be kind of like a second home for kids, right? Before the pandemic. What would you probably say to teachers? How can they make their classes more better such that we can reinstate that second home feeling after having been away?
Yeah, so first of all, when we speak to the teachers and before we reopened and the whole thing started back to offline, first thing is patience, patience, patience. That's what, a lot of patience. And it is something which is very real. We can't just put it under the carpet and say no, it's not there, just go and do it. It is there. There are children who are so anxious and they have such a phobia that they just cannot overcome it just without our help, our intervention. So we have a very open communication. We made the teachers first of all aware at all levels, and then with that I think also bringing in some communication with a two-way communication even between the parent and the teacher. So that helped us to be able to speak it out, like call the teacher, the parent and the child, and before meeting even with the child, the teacher and parent, to make them understand that okay, there is this problem, now we are going to do this, we are going to make them be comfortable, not very big steps, but give them realistic praise for even small steps taken in the right direction. So if they're able to present, able to stand up and say something, even it's okay. Praise them, but be realistic. Don't make them fly very high, and then others do not have that opinion. So give them a realistic feedback and accept them, because everyone has something or the other. Social anxiety is just one thing. Someone else may have something else. So we have to accept that difference. And very important is that that's something which we keep saying is don't take out your because you are very good at maybe an extrovert. Try and understand that this is not just being an introvert, it's much more. So try to include the child, take out answers from him or her, make them comfortable in a group. If someone is not being accepted because of their different behavior, because of social anxiety, make it, the teacher can try her best to include. So these help and if the teacher does it, she's the role model, the children automatically follow.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think what you said about keeping the praise in check also, that's very important, because I think at the end of the day, moderation is key when it comes to helping students overcome. So I'd also like to hear in from Ms. Sakshi here. If you could tell us on the same topic, what parents can do to help the rehabilitation process as well, right? So I think Dr. Chauhan has told us about what teachers can do and the teacher-parent communication. But on the parental front, what can they do to kind of help their children through this process?
Yeah. So firstly, I would suggest that parents need to, manage their own anxiety first, because, they also get panicked and anxious that how to handle the situation when you see a, adolescent in front of you, um, panicking and, being anxious. So they also got anxious. So here we need to calm ourselves first and then try to sit with them and listen them, right? Try to understand what they are going through. Here, we need to stop pathologizing social anxiety or social phobia, because we see it as a disorder, right? So instead of seeing it as a something which is something is wrong with a person, we can try to understand if a teen is feeling that way, if he or she is feeling anxious, why, what's the reason, what's going on inside him or her, right? Really developing that connect, sitting and talking and understanding and acknowledging what they are feeling. Because being a parent, what we do, we get anxious, or we get so concerned that we start um, giving advices, or we somehow try to fix them their anxiety, right? And in that scenario, we somewhere skip that part of trying to know what they are going through, what they are really feeling, right? Talking, listening, understanding. So that space, they need that space. So giving them this space is very important, what I feel. Yeah. And validating their emotions, whatever they are going through, and letting them know that they are not alone in this, and showing the support and concern without, sometimes parents, they start forcing positivity, that that everything will be all right, and just think positive, look on the brighter side. See, there is no harm in saying all these things, because we want to comfort someone, right? But sometimes, or many times, it backfires, because it can further irritates a person who is feeling so anxious. It's like, you are paining your hand, your leg is paining, and you are saying that stop thinking about it, and just eh, looking at the being be positive. So it can further, it can feel invalidating their emotions. So here I would suggest all the parents to sit with their kids and give them that space where they can talk, and really listen to them, try understand what they are going through, and telling them that you are there, and just showing support. That is very crucial.
Definitely. Thank you for that, ma'am. I think what we've learned from both of these answers is that both teachers and parents, the most important thing here is patience, right?
Yeah.
I'd also like to welcome Miss Jyoti. She's just joined. Thank you so much for being here, ma'am. We were just discussing how teachers and parents can help kids with social anxiety, especially in the post-pandemic world after we're coming back to physical scenarios after being virtual for so long. Another thing I wanted to bring out here is that parents often force children to take part in social activities, signing the kids up for competitions in school, or, if there's family gatherings or friends gatherings, parents often force their kids to go. And right way to go about that for a parent, because they don't want to push their kids either. So what's that middle ground? What's the approach that a parent can take? If you could answer that, ma'am.
Can you repeat your question, Sanika? Actually, you are not audible. In between, there were some interruptions. And thank you so much for welcoming me for the session. Could you just brief out your question to me again, so that I'll able to understand what exactly it was?
Right. So I was talking about the fact that a lot of parents force their kids to take part in social gatherings. How does a parent go about helping their kid? Because there's a how do they find that middle ground of helping their kid?
If we'll say the first thing, it is very important, that is the acceptance. So acceptance is utmost important. So first of all, as Sakshi ma'am said, that first of all, parents need to manage their anxiety. So before talking about a child, this anxiety comes to a parent first of all. So first of all, they need to think that is it a really a social anxiety, or is it a daily related to daily things, things related to daily commuting or maybe coming to school, because after 2 years they are coming to school now, and obviously there will be a huge anxiety in them sitting with their peers, and having a fear of COVID again, and they realize that they're in again a same surrounding but with a new fear, that is COVID. So obviously the bridge is there. The bridge between parent and child should be a very, a smaller one, so that they can interact with the parents. So the discussion is the key to everything, and the acceptance from the parents side. So if they accepted that the child struggled from something, I heard some, since I am the HOD of my school, so I heard a lot of cases here and there where children, they really want to work upon their anxiety issues, but the only thing which they face difficulty is that the parents are not supporting them. समवेयर बहुत बार पेरेंट्स ऐसे बोलते हैं, अरे क्या हो गया, तुम्हें कोई एंजाइटी नहीं है, you're all right, तुम्हें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होने वाला, you're so fine. But anxiety is a fluctuating state. We don't understand this. It's a basically a professional language what we say. It sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down also. So you have to be there with your child at every stage. So that acceptance, first of all, it should be there at with parents. And also, if the child is, observing, the children are very observant enough, and they also imitate the same behavior. So when they see that their parents are actually accepting them the way they have, any kind of anxiety issue or whatsoever kind of issue in school or maybe with their personal life, so that's somewhere, decrease that bridge between parent and a child, and then they start expressing themselves. So when you provide them such an environment at home, that makes all the difference. So that environment should be there, the acceptance should be there. And post pandemic, we have seen a lot of cases in our school related to social anxiety. There's a specific case of a child in our school also, where the child is facing a lot of difficulty in communicating with the other sex, interacting with the other sex, and also has a lot of psychological and social anxiety issues. But at the same time, being schools is a different, but first of all, as we all always say, the teacher parent is the first teacher. School always be there for a support system, but student or any child comes from home first of all. So when you provide them such a facility that where they can express themselves, that makes all the difference. So I believe the discussion is utmost important thing. So whenever we have any sessions with our students, or maybe whenever we have any such kind of cases in our clinic also, we always try to prefer to call both the parties, I mean parent and child, so that they'll sit together, and we'll always ask them, please arrange a half an hour discussion time with your family, so that you get to know that what are your concerns which are hampering your child. And it will first start by the parent. So first of all, the parent need to discuss their matters with their children, and then obviously they will get that confidence that yes, my parent can discuss, why won't I? So that's the key actually.
Thank you so much for that, ma'am. I think the main thing that we talked about, the intermingling between parents and teachers, that's very important because the child needs that kind of support as well, right? Um, so we've obviously talked about how a child's environment can affect their social anxiety or the way they perceive themselves. But there's one more very key stakeholder in this entire scenario, which Ms. Jyoti brought out when she said that example of a child not being able to talk to the opposite sex in their class. What can that child's peers do to make them more comfortable? Because in that age group, kids spend a lot of time with their peers, with their friends, be it chatting online or physically. So, Ms. Jyoti, if you could just tell us what, in that case, a peer can do to help a friend of theirs going through something.
So basically, what exactly we have, suggested to that specific child, that we can just start slowly with the child. So the pace will not be very high. So first of all, we'll always try that child to, include that child in any of the class discussions, and always try to assign some duties to the child. And also we'll ask many of the friends, I mean, the classmates are also there. So we can ask them so that you can support this child. एंड सो दैट बहुत सारी ऐसी चीजें होती है, हमने बहुत देखा है बच्चों को कि कई बार verbalization में they are very vocal about it that I have this problem, but the one thing which is not there mostly with kids these days, the empathetic attitude. So that is the important thing. So empathy and developing that empathy is also very important. So we always cater to this thing in our school that, that we'll organize such workshops where children can empathize with the next second child, or maybe the next child, or maybe their peers, maybe their friends, maybe their classmates. And we'll also try to arrange such activities where group discussion will be a part, or maybe we'll organize such activities so that a group leader, or activities which involves each and every mindset. So multiple intelligence, this is the key to the, to solve this problem. So when you try to take everybody on table, everybody's ideas on table, that's somewhere it increases the empathetic attitude. And that should not be competitive enough within the class. We should provide the cooperation, not the competition. So we should assign such duties where somebody might get star but not get any negative points for that matter. So that is actually an important thing.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think the keyword there was empathy, which is something that we have to consciously develop. So I'd like to jump back to Dr. Chauhan here. As we talked about developing empathy in students, how do you think this can be done more effectively in a school scenario? How can we institutionalize it?
Actually, I just heard the first part of the question. Your voice is cracking. So if you can just repeat it once.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's up with the network today. I was talking about how we can institutionalize teaching empathy to children, right? As part of a school curriculum, or in general, how can we teach children empathy?
Yeah, so actually, it's just a part of life skills, empathy, and that has, in fact, nowadays a lot of emphasis is being given, including with the changes in the NEP also, which has recently talked a lot about including more and more life skills, and so basically empathy, even if we don't talk about it as a separate thing, but it's just a part of being a good person. And this is something that we need to emphasize in schools everywhere, whether it's in a school or an institution or even at home. And that's where it all begins, where we need to empathize with others. And in schools also, when simple things like setting the standards that yes, you do not laugh at things when someone is in an uncomfortable situation or is not doing well in class, or as well as the others has some kind of other disability, especially children with learning concerns, learning disabilities. We need to be a little more inclusive and empathetic, try and understand, recognize what it is, and then at the same time understand that that does not mean that you have to keep that person, separate them, keep them away, include them in your groups. And that is something that we all do in schools, and there's more and more awareness in that. It begins with, first of all, being an inclusive school, being an inclusive institution, and setting the standards basically, and giving an awareness, this thing, whole program before the academic year begins, to teachers as well as to children. You'd be surprised to know that children are quite they are quite fine till they go home, and then they are told, oh, don't be with that child because he or she is different, he or she is weak. To sit with smarter kids, sit with someone who is more popular. So awareness needs to also be given to parents that listen, it hasn't happened to your child, but it could be your child, or it could be someone whom you love and dearly. So that's where we do encourage such sessions with parents, children, and make them understand, and of course, starting off with the teachers so that they can identify and they can, sort of intervene in such situations. So you have unreasonable requests from parents, sometimes. I don't blame them completely because they're not aware. So awareness is the first part. And then you have some unreasonable requests that change the place of my child because of this reason, or things like that. So that's when the school has to put their foot down and say, no, this is not a problem. It's something that we believe in, and we want you also to be a part of that journey. and be empathetic and a good human being, which is the first point, I think, before anything else.
Definitely, ma'am. I think what we're getting to know through this conversation again and again is the importance of the intermingling between all the stakeholders in a child's life, because truly to be able to support the child, that supportive community is the most important. Ms. Sakshi, is there anything you would like to add at this point?
Yeah, I would like to add a point that you asked how we can, create empathy, right? So what we can do, how we can create empathy. See, everything comes, like we say, charity begins at home. So first we need to understand ourselves. We need to be self-compassionate, right? When we start knowing ourselves, when we start understanding our problems, our emotions, what I am going through, what I feel in these kind of situations, then if I am able to feel that compassion for myself and understand my situations, my emotions, then I would be more able to understand others' situations and their emotions, their feelings, right? And then it will come automatically. Then I would be more able to relate with them, be empathetic, compassionate towards them. So it's really important, firstly, to know about yourself, to know about what your emotions, validating your emotions, because most of the times we end up avoiding and invalidating our emotions, our feelings. We get so self-critical, and that creates all the mess. So when we don't, when we criticize ourselves, when we don't understand ourselves, we end up criticizing others, right? Because we take it so lightly, and we end up invalidating their emotions as well. So it's really important to understand yourself, and then we would be naturally able to understand others.
Yeah, I think that was a very important point, ma'am. And in fact, it perfectly sets the stage for my next question, which is so we've talked about the parents, we've talked about the teachers, we've talked about the peers. But coming back to the child themselves, how can a child figure out that, yes, this is something I am going through? How can a child bring that level of self-awareness and say that, yes, I need to ask someone for help, or what I'm going through is not something that I can deal with on my own. So, Ms. Jyoti, if you could start with that, on how a child can become more self-aware and learn how to help themselves or seek help from someone.
So first of all, knowing about the symptomology is also very important. So most of us, and what I have observed is that here and there we all feel anxiety. That it's not that it's only the children, and it's okay sometimes to have anxiety, but it is when it prolonged, then it's a problem. So first of all, the difference between a prolonged anxiety and a general anxiety, that has to be understood. Okay. And now these days, what children are doing is they are keep on Googling about the anxiety. And then there is a self-diagnose that comes. So that should be, first of all, first hand, we should not encourage such activities. Secondly, we should psychoeducate our children in school. Like we have counselors, we have special educators in our school. In most of the schools these days, special educators and counselors, these are specific to have such specialists in school, so that they'll sensitize not only still teachers, also students, regarding how to identify your issues and how to organize such things. So by organizing workshops or maybe webinars where you talk about these issues, where you organize such sessions, when you have one-to-one interaction or maybe group discussion with them, what exactly anxiety all about, what are the triggering points, what are the symptomology. So when they are self-aware, then they can understand that is it really anxiety. What I heard is बहुत natural सा एक मैंने statement बहुत students को बोलते देखा है, आज मेरा पेपर अच्छा नहीं हुआ, मुझे बहुत depression हो रहा है. So this is something which I heard here and there, and I always, stop them and tell them, see, you're not in depression, you are just in a state of stress and anxiety, and that will pass away. Don't worry. You can study well for your next exam. Forget about this. Concentrate on your next exam, and live with it. Secondly, is when they know this difference, that what is the difference between having anxiety episode and having anxiety for here and there for no reason, or maybe for any stress out of your hassles or out of your life events, that makes all the difference. So when they're able to distinguish that, somewhere they become self-aware. So that self-awareness is important. And obviously being schools and being NGOs and being responsible organizations, we can organize such activities where our children become psychoeducated about it. So secondly, when they got psychoeducation, the next is how to approach a professional. So there are certain triggering points when you're not able to concentrate on your studies, when you're not able to concentrate on the tasks which have been assigned to you, or maybe if it is interfering in your day-to-day life, or maybe it is interfering in your relationship with your peers, with your parents, with your age mates, then it's a alarming stage. Then it's a red flag stage that yes, you have to seek a professional help, either a school counselor or a psychologist outside, or maybe a teacher also. There, then and there, the somewhere the guidance required by the student. So most of the times, as I said, self-diagnosis, that has to be stopped. Our today's generation, they are so much into websites, they are so much into internet, that they actually forget that they are professionals also who can help them out. So I heard a lot of cases like that, similar cases in my clinic also, where actually people come with a big list with self-diagnosis, and they say, "Ma'am, मुझे तो डिप्रेशन भी है, मुझे तो एंजाइटी भी है, और मेरे साथ ऐसा बहुत दिनों से हो रहा है कि मेरे सर में बहुत हेडेक है, तो मुझे लग रहा है कि मुझे सोमैटोफॉर्म भी हो गया है, और मुझे और बहुत सारे कोमॉर्बिडिटीज हो गई हैं, आजकल मेरा पढ़ाई में भी ध्यान नहीं लग रहा, मुझे लग रहा है मेरी आईक्यू भी वीक हो गई है." So you can understand the scenario that how self-diagnose is actually destroying the generation. So limiting the access to unnecessary means, that should be there. And obviously they are at this age that you can't control them, you can't clutch them. So the better idea is to educate them for the certain things. So that is the key, I believe.
Yeah, definitely, ma'am. In fact, my next question was on self-diagnosis. I'm so glad you covered that because it's so important. So many kids are reading about things somewhere and saying, "Oh, yeah, this is the issue that I have or issue I'm facing." Dr. Chauhan, I think you raised your hand in between with that.
No, please excuse that. I was just, it was for something else.
All right, no worries. So my next question is, after we've talked about how people can help a kid, how they promote a certain kind of environment, how can kids help themselves? But a very hammering question at this point is, what is the point at which a kid should, or a parent or a teacher should say, okay, it's time for professional intervention. This is not something that we can wait on. This is not something we can sit on. It's time for professional intervention. So, Ms. Sakshi, if you could tell us at what point or what are the indicators of that point?
Your voice is cracking a lot. Can you please repeat? I missed your voice.
My apologies. I just got in touch with the community as well. The network seems to be down in this area. My question was, at what point do we ask for professional intervention?
Okay. Yeah, I think this is very important question where we need to understand when we can, seek help, right? So when things escalate so much and a child ends up maybe dropping out from school, or you can see some strange patterns, behavioral patterns that he's he or she is spending so much time alone and maybe indulging himself in some sort of substance abuse, or using alcohol, or maybe some form of drugs in coping with, dealing with that anxiety, and avoiding social situations, avoiding friends, maybe going out for social events, and um, we can see um, he or she is developing sense of worthlessness, because it can impact one's self-esteem so much. That level of anxiety can, crush someone's self-esteem, inner confidence so much. So these can be signs one can, recognize that now this is the time that we should seek help. And I would suggest that in most of the cases, I see that, parents, teachers suggest that they end up, going to a psychiatrist. In most of the cases, teens, they don't need psychiatrists, they don't need medicines. They want someone to talk. They want someone to understand their problem, or why they are anxious or what they are going through. So I would really suggest, if you can, seek help and go to a professional psychologist, a therapist, where he and she can, you know, talk their heart out, and they can feel safe to talk about their anxiety and their fears, their insecurities. So that is very important. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you, ma'am. I think those very important specific indicators that you gave is something people can look out for. Um, there was a question in the chat that I saw, and I realized that we kind of skipped over that topic while we were in our discussion. So it's in the Q&A box where a person asks, why are youth facing social anxiety? What is the reason? So, Dr. Chauhan, if we can start with your insights on that, and then we'll go around the panel.
So, social anxiety, of course, there are so many reasons, but mainly we have a lot of more exposure now than ever before. Today's youth has access to everything, and I mean, they are aware of so many things which probably in my time I was not aware of. With it comes a lot more on responsibility on their little shoulders, if you know what I mean. They are trying to sort of be good at everything, be it your school or whether it's a career or anything. And expectations are high, even parental pressures, their peer pressure, schools, there are so many things. This leads them towards more and more of that. Previously also it was there, but probably there weren't that many labels to it. We didn't know people were with this have a problem of social anxiety. They just were known as maybe very quiet children, doesn't mix, etc. But now we know that there is this, we can overcome it, and that is why today's youth is also able to seek help. And I was very happy to know about what Ms. Jyoti said about, how every symptom can be found on Google, and therefore they feel they have a remedy. So typically children and all of us, even I'm also one of them, so often we look for solutions straight away from Google. Okay, here it is. But actually you need help. So today's youth too, also because of the hectic schedules, no time. So, okay, let's just quickly look here. We don't have time to go and look for help. Do we need this? Do we need that? Everything is available online. If you can shop online, you can even consult online. Of course, if they consult online, that's fine. But, just looking for something which is for the general public and everybody, it doesn't cover each and everyone's individual things. So today's youth, with awareness comes a lot more responsibility and too many things that he or she is expected to do and also wants to do. That has led them to being a more worried lot. So with media, with being all the time stuck to our computers and our phones are the biggest problem. If we leave it for, if we keep it aside for an hour, we only get anxious. So you can imagine today's youth, the biggest punishment is taking their phone away. And that we have, basically we have to stay connected. That also gives anxiety. You have so many kids talking about headaches. All of them definitely would need specs and backaches. And these are all signs of people who are stressed. So this is just my take. I don't know. We have people over here on the panel who can also give their own, the scientific insight, but that's what I feel.
Thank you so much for that, ma'am. I think also the fact that you talked about these hectic schedules and so much to do and so many different sorts of pressures coming in on kids, I think that's definitely one factor that plays in. Would the others on our panel want to add anything to this? On the reasons of that the youth are facing social anxiety.
Like that, this is one of the reasons that they are packed jammed with so much of stuff. Even when it is not related to the psychological issues, I believe it is related to their academics also. Whenever they have to, know any specific answer, they just straight away Google it. So Google, somewhere internet is giving them a boon also, and somewhere it's a disaster for them. So that understanding that at what level we should be relying on internet and at what level we should not rely on internet. Sometimes physical meeting people, getting consultancy for physically, that is more important. As if I heard a lot of cases here and there where children themselves they are consulting psychologists, and without any consent of their parents, they have started taking medicines, started taking consultations, therapies, and we ask them when you inquire about it, when you want to have a clarification, then they say it was there on internet, ma'am, and I just booked the appointment, and that's why I come to know that I have social anxiety or maybe I have some other anxiety issues. So first of all, telling your parents is the utmost important thing, and taking your parents along or maybe some elder along with you, so that it becomes altogether a practical and an authentic measure or a system to monitor your symptoms.
Thank you, ma'am. I think the case that you told us about someone who's taking medicines also without their parents' consent, that's kind of scary to even hear. So I think a word to everyone who's watching this webinar, please be in constant communication with your parents, to all the kids here. Ms. Sakshi, would you like to add on anything on the reasons that I think youth specifically, as we've been talking about, are facing social anxiety?
Yeah, some of the reasons which I found during my sessions with teens, that one of the biggest reason of social anxiety can be insecurities. In most of the cases, our youth is, majorly insecure and, you know, bullying and having those incidences where one may feel ridiculed or not being understood, or ashamed, making fun, is one of the reason that you know um, someone can feel, and that internal shame is there, that internal insecurity is there, and nowadays many teens have body issues, and those issues mostly arises when in their own families, when their own parents body shame them, or their friends, they don't understand why someone is getting fat, or you know uh, in terms of their complexion, how someone look, how they interact with others. So understanding, again, I would say, we start among peers, especially, they start making fun and judging someone and criticizing them, and this can create, this can harm someone's self-esteem, and it can create a lot of shame inside, and later on, this internal shame, this insecurity, it can create self-criticism, and we start criticizing our own self, disliking our own body and our own self, and this can lead to high anxiety, and again that loop has been created where we don't feel secure enough to go out and interact and participate and um, being with others in groups or social situations. So that this thing majorly impacts, and it can create that anxiety and panic inside someone when they have to go outside and face people voice.
Yeah, thank you for talking about that, ma'am. The self-esteem issues and that fear of being judged, which I think was also part of the title of this webinar. And something that just struck my mind when you were saying this was what is the possible effect of social media in playing into like increased social anxiety, say in recent times? And the whole virtual world, people are so obsessed with likes and followers, and they're constantly getting so much stimulus from other people's lives. How is that affecting the youth nowadays?
Yeah, social media is definitely impacting a lot, and especially Instagram has changed the world, especially teens. And nowadays, everyone is on Facebook, Instagram, and there is this, a perception has been created being perfect in every way, and everyone is, creating that picture of having a good life and a perfect um, a perfect picture kind of thing, and we constantly compare ourselves. Yeah, comparing in terms of lifestyle they are having, or um, in terms of appearance, complexion, body type, everything. We keep on constantly comparing, and that comparison can lead to anxiety, self criticism. Oh, I don't look so good, and I'm fat, and I'm dark, and this thing. There are so many beautiful girls out there, and handsome guys, and all that stuff, and keep on thinking. This overthinking loop goes on, this self criticism, and mostly people, they end up stuck in that loop, and they don't know how to come out from that, and that creates more anxiety, and then they end up being frustrated and depressed, and this goes on and on.
I'm so sorry, I was on mute. Thank you so much for that answer, ma'am. And just quickly before we move on with the conversation, I'd like to ask Dr. Chauhan for any closing remarks because we understand she has another appointment after this. So if you could just give your closing remarks, any words of advice to parents, teachers, children, anything before you go, we'd love to hear from you.
So first of all, I'd just like to thank you all for having me here. And as far as advice, I mean, there's nothing that works for everyone, but only thing is that we need to, if our child has a kind of a social anxiety, a phobia, accept that they have a problem. Just don't try to, say that there's no problem, and also try to seek help, be it from your school, be it from whoever the child is comfortable with speaking, speaking to someone whom they can be comfortable with, and then look out and get help, because sometimes you do need to look out for a psychologist, or someone who can help them out and guide them with the correct steps. So this is just what I feel, and thank you everyone. Thank you Sanika, Sakshi, Jyoti, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So I'd like to resume on our previous conversation. Ms. Jyoti, is there anything you would want to add on the social media? And also, I'd like to pitch in a small other question here. How does the virtual world affect the physical reality of kids?
So I'll answer your first question. Yes, of course, media plays a very important role when it comes to the impact on, especially on our generation, and not sticking to the generation. I must say to everyone. So when a child sees something being promoted by a celebrity, so obviously they try to imitate the same, and it comes with same anxiety issues also. I still remember when that movie came.
I'm sorry, I think someone was accidentally unmuted.
Okay, it's all right. So there were two movies. After those two movies, the entire scenario has now changed. One is Tare Zameen Pe, and the second is Deal Zindagi. So after these two movies, drastically, the viewpoint, image of mental stigma, or maybe the mental health and mental concerns has changed now. People now know what is anxiety, what is stress, what is dyslexia, what are the psychological issues, and why they are so severe, and why it is important to tackle these and cater to these problems. Why do we need a family? Why do we need a family support and a professional support? So that is important. So obviously it's very evident that media plays a very vital role when it comes to creating an awareness, or maybe destroying something, both the sides. And the second question of yours was that how I just forgot your question. Sorry, can you repeat?
Right, so it was pulling on these same lines on how the virtual world that a kid lives in. I think that nowadays people live in two worlds, right? The virtual world and then the physical world. So, how does
Exactly.
the virtual world affect a child's or an adolescent's physical reality? How much does it play into?
It actually, the virtual world comes with without any restrictions. When we talk about physical world, it has obviously a norms in a society that everyone has to follow. So, virtual world, there is no means to stop or to watch on children what they are watching, what they are, what they are googling, what type of information they are getting. So that is something which can be advantages for them, and or can be a disadvantages for them. But when it comes to physical world, obviously their concern become more vital. Their concern become more biological and more physical, more feasible to cater to their problems. So it is very obvious that a child should understand the virtual world is actually, when it comes to dealing with people, we always, we don't use our OTPs, or we never ever share any specific information of ours with somebody. So why we are using, why we are sharing um, any specific concern of ours with somebody who's a stranger to us? So first of all, that is important. So virtual world and physical world, both the worlds, we need to be very vigilant. We need to be very practical enough when we interact with people. And also, there is a platform which virtual world was there when, before this COVID, the virtual world was not that, it was not that functionable. But when COVID come. So after this issue, after this particular pandemic, everybody has started working on virtually, and the entire scenario has changed. So both the platforms are important, but one should understand that what needs to be shared or what needs to cater at what platform. I have seen a lot of kids these days that they share their problems. There are so many apps available these days where they can just, mention their symptoms, and automatically the diagnosis of disorder comes. So that is something which is, dangerous for them, because without knowing the other side of the person, is it a computer system or is it actually a psychologist who's working on your symptomology and giving you a diagnosis, or maybe giving you a therapy. So that is important. So entirely depending upon virtual world is not feasible. We have to connect with the real world as well. And also googling things and searching out things, we should limit our resources so that it will not lead to any misunderstandings or any self diagnosis, as I said earlier also, because we have seen a lot of cases like that in our clinic most of the times. when people come and they say, ma'am, I have this problem, do you know, I have these many symptoms. So we always have, okay, that's okay, you have this, no problem, let us sit together and discuss about it. So that is important. So whatever you share on virtual world, that has to be realistically you have to share.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, ma'am. I think all the kids on this webinar will also take that learning with them. That definitely, and the virtual world, we probably don't have a comprehensive understanding of the system, like you said. Um, I think our discussion has definitely sparked some questions that we saw coming in through the audience. So we'd like to move on to taking a few audience questions here. So our first question is from Akshay. If you could please unmute and ask your question to our panelists.
Oh, yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask how a child could seek professional help, when there is so much stigma around mental health professional, and even if someone is, if even if a child wants to go to therapy, and if someone is showing a lot of resistance to it, what can be done in that case?
Thank you so much for your question, Akshay. If any of our panelists want to take this up, I think it's a very important topic because we've talked about professional intervention and the stigmas that surround it. So,
Yeah, can I go?
sure, ma'am.
Yeah. So it's really something which is very important, and there is no doubt that it's a huge stigma, especially in Indian society, around mental health issues. And firstly, we need psychoeducation. We need to talk about these issues because nobody talks about emotional mental health, right? Nobody cares that much. We can pay attention if we are having even a mild fever or flu. We quickly run to the doctor and we get the treatment done. But in terms of mental health, emotional health, nobody can see what is going through we are going through, and what is going on inside. So we need to talk about it, and we need to understand that there is nothing wrong in it. We see it in that terms, that if I am going to a psychologist, if I am going to a therapist, okay, then it means there is something wrong with me, and I am mad, or I am crazy, or मैं बिल्कुल पागल हो गया हूँ, और and this इस terms में हम उसको लेते हैं. Especially parents, they don't understand. Most of in my cases, there is a huge problem of understanding again. Parents, they don't understand कि इतना भी क्या बड़ा हो गया तुम्हारी लाइफ में कि you need to go to a therapist. Why don't you talk to us, right? And there is in mostly cases there is that lack of disconnect, and where they feel like not opening up to their parents, and they feel that they are not understanding, and they are constantly invalidating their feelings. So here parents need to understand that there is nothing wrong. Like we go to gym to to be fit and physically fit, to we give importance to that. That's how it's exactly same. We go to therapy to make ourselves sane, to work on our uh, you know um, issues, emotional issues, which is hampering our growth, which is holding us back. So there is no harm in this. There is nothing bad in this. It's how we are. We humans are, life is so unpredictable, life is so complex, and we humans are complex, and things happen. Problems, in uncertainty, sufferings are part of human life, right? And there is no shame in this. If we are seeking help, we need to understand that it's totally okay, it's totally fine to seek help. And it's actually it's actually wise and very brave to open up to someone else. And I always, firstly, I appreciate my clients that they took that step, because it's something which is very huge to come out from that zone and step out from your home and um, going to someone and talk about your issues which you are going through, because it's not easy.
Definitely, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. We hope that answered your question, Akshay. Um, our next live question is from Miss Vanita Gaur. If you could please unmute and ask our panelists your question.
Yeah, hello, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening to all. My question is that in my school, there are so many students are there, and they having so many problems, and they always ask that I have headache, I don't want to listen anything else, and don't want to speak anything else, and so many problem is there. In a 15 days, is 20 to 25 students they have that type of problem, ma'am. So, ma'am,
Miss,
yes, ma'am, I want to know about the what is this? It is a anxiety.
so Miss Jyoti, I think because you've interacted with so many students who would have probably had the same issues in school, if you
Right,
could
right.
answer this.
What I believe is here, first of all, being teachers and being responsible organizations, before going or commenting or deciding anything that the child has anxiety issues or something like that, first of all, we really need to see what are the struggles which child is facing. So is it only at school the child is behaving like that? Or is it something related, physicality problem is there or not with the child? Sometimes, we think that the child is not writing in class, but the problem is with his or her vision, not with the child's intellectuality. So that matters a lot. So first of all, you need to assess, or you need to observe that is it the problem same everywhere? Is the problem comes everywhere? Is it same here also? Is it same at home also? Is the child actually behaving in certain class like this, or maybe the behavior is similar in other classes also? Because sometimes when children don't like specific subject, so they behave. These are their defense mechanisms actually. So they really want to try it out and they want to escape from that class. So sometimes they excuse also, but if this particular behavior is same everywhere, then it's a matter of concern. Maybe it's an indication that somewhere the child is struggling with some problem, or maybe the child somewhere has any anxiety issues. Maybe the child is not talking about, maybe any bully issues, maybe something related to academic issues. Maybe the child really wants to study but have difficulty in studying the academics. So that's somewhere we should first psychoeducate our own selves. This is the reason why I always ask my panel experts in my school, since I'm the HOD, so I have to take care of the entire department. I always ask my panelists to create awareness among teachers and also for parents, that first of all, you need to understand that is it really a concern, or is it just a phase of your life? So that is there. Some people, some children, they are stubborn enough, they are very rigid, they don't want to be obedient towards their elders. So there is a difference. Is it a behavioral issue? Is it an anxiety issue? Is it actually a psychological problem or a behavioral problem or a academic problem with the child? So first hand information, and also the first hand, or we can say preliminary session, that is something which is required. So then we can go to any kind of a conclusion, because knowing about a one symptom and commenting about the diagnosis, this is something which we step back from this thing.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think that's important, even outside probably the school setting, the understanding, knowing just one symptom and trying to make a diagnosis out of it. It's something that people should not do with themselves, not with their friends or children or in any situation. So I think that was a very important point to bring up. Our next question is from Navya Juneja. If you could please unmute and ask our panelists your question.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Okay. My question is like, is social anxiety just a higher and more intense level of being asocial, or are these terms completely two different things?
So, would any of our panelists like to take that up?
Yeah, we can talk about it like asocial. See, we see these interchangeably. If someone is having social anxiety, we see it as, this person is antisocial. But we need to understand that these two are, different terms. If someone is having social anxiety, it means, they want to interact with others, they want to go out, and they want to participate, but something is holding them back. There is something deep down which we need to, need to know and understand, which we need to explore and figure out what is holding them back. Maybe they are highly insecure about something, maybe they are, there is intense fear of being, judged. Maybe they, in the past, they have been judged, due to some reasons. They have been bullied or criticized or body shamed, or there must be something at the back which is creating major insecurities in them, which make them, uh, you know not going how hard they can try to, express themselves, or be confident. And in such situations, most of the, people, they end up criticizing themselves, why I'm not able to, go out, or why I'm not able to express myself. And they start judging themselves, criticizing, blaming themselves, I'm not good enough, and I'm not worthy enough. And that leads to, more harm. So we need to understand these things, that if someone is having social anxiety, that doesn't mean it's a, it's, he or she is antisocial and, not liking that thing. I hope I answered this question. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I think one of the many conclusions that we've got from this webinar, one of them also is that anxiety and stress is something that people feel on a regular basis. Some people may be antisocial or may not want to talk to people, but that does not necessarily mean that it's social anxiety or it's an anxiety disorder. So I think on the diagnosis side also we've talked about a lot. But on the treatment side, we have a question by Nanda Matre. So if you could unmute and ask your question. Am I audible? All right, well, I think I'll ask the question. It says, what remedies can be arranged for kids in the age of 12 to 19 with regards to social anxiety and social disorders? So I think that would be a nice wrapping up to our conversation as well. If we could talk about the remedy side of social anxiety.
Okay. So what I believe is, first of all, see, anxiety, in particular anxiety, be it your social or be it any general anxiety also, the first thing that we do is to relax a patient or a relax a client. So the relaxation is actually a very first component which we focus on. So the relaxation techniques could be very, person specific. For me, might be my relaxation comes with meditation, maybe by yoga, or for somebody with their relaxation comes with going for an exercise or going for jogging or walking or listening to a music. So that relaxation matters. So when we do relaxation with them, somewhere or the other, their anxiety, brings at the lower level. And when you are able to bring that anxiety at the lower level, there we can catch hold of them, and then we can start work on their problematic or concerned areas, right? So the relaxation is utmost important. The second thing is this, that we have lot of therapies in our professional areas, like in psychology, that says that is very person specific. When it comes to, see, every patient is different for us. Somebody comes with their own rigid mindset. Somebody comes with an open mindset. So it depends upon your client that what type of therapy you will deliver. Sometimes your patient comes with their own ethics and their own integrity and with their own demands. So that's how sometimes you have to be really flexible with your approach. But sometimes your inclined is entirely depending on you. So there you have to take the lead. So it depends upon person to person, and the utmost important is, and the very first component is to make them relax. And there is one more. I really don't know that most of you heard about it or not. It's basically a relaxation doesn't comes with yoga and meditation only. It comes with bodily relaxation also. So there are different therapies in psychology which talks about tightening up your muscles and then releasing them, or maybe a simple breathing exercise. Breathe in and then breathe out. These also exercise can also help them in not shooting their anxiety to that level that they are not able to handle that anxiety shocks. So that is there. I believe the relaxation is the utmost component, and then we look upon to their concerns, and accordingly will arrange for their therapies. So if I'll say that these many other therapies which we'll focus, then it will be a very stigmatized, because we have lot of and numerous therapies are there in psychology as a profession, and it depends upon that what type of client will come and what type of clinical judgment and clinical professionalism you have, and that type of therapy you will use.
Thank you so much for that, ma'am. Thank you for covering the fact that there are so many different types of therapies as well, and it depends on the person. So there's no like one size fits all when it comes to social anxiety or any other mental disorder for that matter. Ms. Sakshi, is there anything that you would want to add here?
Yeah, I can add, like, I'm totally agree with Ms. Jyoti that relaxation is very important. And we need to understand why someone feels anxious. If someone is feeling anxious, it means their nervous system is detecting some threat. Anxiety is basically the fight flight, which we heard, like which we read in our books when we were in school. This fight and flight survival mechanism. And if I'm feeling anxious, it means my body is sensing a threat. And that makes me anxious and makes me either fight or flight and, do something to, make me survive or make me protect myself. So in that case, we need, something which can makes us feel safe, because at that moment we subconsciously feel unsafe. And these relaxation um, exercises, or we can do deep breathing exercises, some sort of movement. It, as you said, it really depends on client to client, person to person. There is no one fixed thing. Maybe some people find relaxing doing cardio or some kind of yoga or something, some movement thing. Some people find relaxation in sitting quietly and being mindful about their inner world. Some people find relaxation in meditation or doing deep breathing exercises. So you can definitely try all these things, and these are really helpful. Going in nature and spending some time in nature and having walk, and it can really help with anxiety and make you feel safe. Belly breathing, deep breathing, and there is 1 4 7 8. 4 you inhale, and 7 then you hold, and 8 you exhale. And when you deeply exhale, like, inhaling should be the shorter one and exhaling should be longer one. And exhaling from the mouth, it really helps in soothing your system and makes you feel calmer. So this really helps. Belly breathing, when you breathe in, your belly goes out, and then you hold and feel that, and then you release it slowly and your belly goes in. So that definitely helps. There is one box breathing which you can try. um, and you can spend some time with your pets also. Pets also, they help a lot in calming yourself, soothing. So you can take help of your pet or someone you feel soothing. If you feel like talking to someone, this can really help you with social anxiety and other, and with other anxiety disorders. So yeah, you can try.
I would like
Thank
to
you.
add. I would like to add 2 points over here. As ma'am said, that there are so many things out there which are possible to, you can pick any suits your personality and suits your time. There are few things also. I mean, I just want to add on to this. There are dance therapy and music therapy. A lot of people into gyms and all, but people these days they express their fears. They understand their emotions when they dance, and dance is also one of the therapy. So whatever I believe, relaxing yourself is not only the means which we are telling them. Relaxing is just to recognize your habits and your part of positivity, and that is very subjective. For me, maybe planting a plant at my place is a positivity, and that relaxes me from my anxiety. Or maybe completing my task without a deadline or before the deadline, that's keeps me on a relaxation state. So that depends upon your personality, that whatever kind of a personality you have, one should always follow that, whatever suits you or whatever makes you happy. That somewhere automatically decreases the anxiety level, be it your social anxiety or be it any anxiety of yours.
Thank you for bringing those up, ma'am. I think music therapy, dance therapy. I've also heard of art therapy before. I think all of these are lesser known forms of therapy, and that may actually suit a person, like you said, depending on their personality. There's definitely something that people should definitely explore for themselves and what works best for them. I think this has been a great discussion from the start, where we started off with just trying to figure out what social anxiety is, to in the past 1.5 hours, we've come very far in understanding how parents can help, how teachers can help, how peers can help, how a person can help themselves, the dangers of self-diagnosis, and we've talked about therapies, and we've also taken a few very insightful audience questions. So I think it's been a great webinar, and I'd like to thank you both for your immense contribution to this conversation, and definitely in sensitizing our entire audience about this very important issue. So just before we wrap up, if there's any closing addresses that you would like to tell anyone in our audience.
I'll just say a few things. It's okay to have anxiety, but it's not okay to talk about it. So always surrender yourself to universe. Try to seek support from your elders, from your parents. Try convincing them. If your parents are not understanding your point, take somebody into your confidence, maybe your elder brother, your younger brother, your sister, your sibling, anyone, the one who understands your emotions. You can take their help. And also a very important thing, do not think that you are the only one. There are so many people who are struggling, and they have come out from their problems, and they are living their life happily ever. Just be happy and enjoy the life at most. Whatever here and now, the phenomena and the part is here and now. Whatever you enjoy presently, that makes all the difference. Rest. I really hope that whenever you feel any kind of such issues, you will always look upon to your elders and the one whom you trust a lot, either a professional or a sister, brother, anyone. That's all.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think the very important point is also knowing that we're not alone, that there's always people to help us, and that we're not the only ones going through this. That's probably very reassuring to everyone. So thank you so much for that. Ms. Sakshi?
Thank you so much for having us on for such a wonderful session where I can see other professionals, where I have also learned a lot of things. And it was a great opportunity to interact with such a good audience where they, motivate you in between in the chat box. And that somewhere, motivates you that yes, you are on the right track, you're helping people and keep doing this same work. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for being here, ma'am, and for sharing all your insights.
Yeah, can I talk?
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah, so firstly, I'm so grateful that you give me this opportunity to come here and discuss these things. So I'm really grateful and thankful to you. And I would like to add up, like Ms. Jyoti said, that it's totally fine. It's totally okay to have anxiety, and this makes us human, right? If we are alive, then it's obvious that we will feel, certain emotions. Life is, there is no one way. There is no, there is no um like rainbows and all those rosy things always. So life comes with goods and bads, and brightness and dullness, right? So we need to accept this thing. If I am feeling in a certain way, if I am feeling certain emotions, because what we think, if I am having, if I am having anger or anxiety or sadness, then there is something wrong with me. There is nothing wrong with you. This is what we humans are. We humans, we have this tendency to feel in certain ways. But yeah, when things start accelerating and get intense, and you frequently have that intense level of anxiety, and that persists, and it hampers your life in some way, then you should, then you should seek help. And there is something which you need to do about that thing, and especially parents and teachers, I would again suggest understanding is the key. Try to connect with um, with teens, or with your kids, and try to listen to them and give them that space without interrupting, or without trying to fix them. I know it's very hard, because we got so concerned and so worried sometimes, that we immediately try to you know show them, and good things, and try to make things better for them. So let them be in that, with that feeling, and talk about it, what they are going through. And maybe after that, you can both discuss how you can make them feel better, and what you can do for them. And and not just forcing something, and just discussing, and understanding that there is no harm in seeking help. Actually, it's good, because in most of the cases, I got those cases where things got so much intense, and in terms of anxiety or sadness or depression, and then they turn up, and then चीजें हाथ से निकल जाती हैं बहुत बार. So उस स्टेज पे जाने से पहले, it's better that you realize these things, and start taking steps, so that you won't get, you know uh, your situation won't get worsen up with time.
Definitely, ma'am. Thank you for those very insightful closing remarks. And I'd like to say again a huge thank you to our panelists. I think this was a wonderful conversation, an enlightening conversation, if I can say so, of an issue that is not talked about very often. So it was a very important conversation, and I'd like to thank all of you for being here today, giving us your time and giving us your very valuable inputs. I'd also like to thank everyone in the audience for joining us in this webinar, and for being an amazing audience, for being so engaged with the conversation, and for asking some wonderful questions that helped further our discussion. I'd like to announce the sharpest question of the day winner goes to Akshay Gir. Someone from our communications team will reach out to you shortly. Thank you so much once again, everyone, for joining this discussion. We'll see you all next week in next week's webinar. Thank you to the panelists once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Bye. Have a nice day.
You too. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We request you to please fill in the feedback form before leaving. If any of your questions were left unanswered, please post them using #webinar by Sharp on social media platforms, and we will try to answer it as soon as possible. Certificates to all of the participants will be emailed within 2 days after the webinar. Subscribe for latest updates of our upcoming webinars on www.schoolindia.org. Sharp NGO conducts free mental health awareness sessions for schools pan-India. To register your school, please visit our website www.schoolindia.org. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.